Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a deep dive into Germanic mythology, and we're focusing on a really fascinating figure, Heimdall. Important, yes, but also, well, pretty mysterious, according to the sources we've got here.
That's right. We have some interesting material that brings together the various myths, his possible roles, gives us a lot to, unpack.
And that's exactly our mission today. We want to go through this, figure out what seems certain about Heimdall, his main job, the key stories, his unique features, but also really explore the questions that still linger around him.
Yeah, we'll sort of walk through it together, point out the really interesting bits, and try to understand what makes him such a complex character based on this information.
Okay, let's jump right in. When you think Heimdall, the absolute first thing, the part everyone agrees on, is his role as the great guardian god of Asgard.
Absolutely. He's positioned right there at the end of Bifröst, that rainbow bridge connecting Asgard to the other worlds. His hall is Himmelnjörg, Heavenly Castle. It's basically the watchtower.
And what a watchman. The sources really emphasize his senses. It's incredible stuff, like hearing grass grow on Earth.
Or wool on a sheep, yeah.
He can see over 100 miles day or night and apparently barely needs any sleep. I mean, talk about perfect for the job.
Exactly. And absolutely central to that job is his horn, Gjallarhorn. It's described as, well, the loudest horn anywhere. Its purpose is crucial.
To warn everybody, right?
Yes, to be blown when danger approaches, a warning that can be heard in all 9 realms, calling the gods to arms.
He sounds pretty imposing. And the descriptions they add to that picture, too, often described as really tall, magnificent, powerful.
Snorri even calls him the White Aesir, which is quite a specific title.
Oh, and his teeth. Can't forget the golden teeth. And his sword, Hufhut, meaning human head. Quite the figure.
So you put it all together, the location, the senses, the horn, the description, it all points very clearly to him being a primary guardian god, but this is where the sources tell us it gets, well, a lot less simple.
Right. They actually say his guardian role is pretty much where any symbol interpretation of Heimdall ends. Beyond that, he's called a rather mysterious figure.
Yes, the text really highlights that. How many other potential roles are suggested or debated, or just, we're not sure how the ancient Germanic peoples really saw him beyond that guardian part.
So what are some of those other possibilities they mentioned?
Oh, quite a few. Guardian of social order, that's a big one we'll get into. But also maybe god of dawn, god of fire, god of water, even a god of new life. It's a real spectrum.
Shows how much is open to interpretation. And speaking of things that aren't simple, his origins, they're really unique, even for myth.
Oh, they're fascinating. According to these sources, Heimdall doesn't have just one mother, but 9 simultaneously.
9 mothers. How does that even work?
Well, the sources say they're 9 sisters, daughters of Aegir and Ran, the sea giants. And these sisters are actually personifications of the waves. So he's essentially born from the sea.
Ah, okay. So that connects back to one of those potential roles you mentioned.
Exactly. His lineage, grandson of sea giants, born of the waves. It's why he's sometimes seen as a water god. But here's another wrinkle in the mystery.
Right.
He's descended from giants, but it's unclear exactly how he came to join the Aesir, the gods in Asgard. The source kind of speculates that maybe because his grandparents, Aegir and Ran, were generally friendly with the gods, that might explain why he was welcomed. Still a bit hazy, though.
So he's guarding the bridge, born from the waves. What else is really key to Heimdall? Well, there's his connection to another major player, but it's definitely not friendly.
No, not at all. Intense hostility is the word. The sources flat out state he's considered Loki's archenemy.
And this isn't just like a general dislike. It plays out in specific, very vivid stories. There's that one from the Edda, Hustrapa, I think it's called, about Loki stealing Freya's necklace, Brisingamen.
Yes. And Heimdall is right on his tail. Loki flees, reaches the sea, turns into a seal to escape.
And Heimdall just dives right in after him.
Transforms into a seal, too. And they have this incredible underwater battle for the necklace.
As seals.
As seals. And Heimdall wins. He gets Brisingamen back, returns it to Freya, and leaves Loki bloody and bitten on the beach, as the source puts it. A clear victory for Heimdall there.
But that fight doesn't end their feud. It really builds towards Ragnarök, the final battle.
Yes, that's Heimdall's ultimate moment as guardian. When the forces of chaos gather, Heimdall raises Gjallarhorn and blows it. That sound, shattering the worlds, is the alarm heard everywhere, summoning everyone for the last stand.
And he's not just sounding the horn, he fights too.
He absolutely does. And guess who he meets on the battlefield?
Loki.
Loki. The sources say they find each other one last time and they kill each other, ending their enmity with their mutual death. It's a perfectly symmetrical end to their rivalry, really. Tragic, but symmetrical.
Okay, so we have Heimdall the Guardian, born of the sea, Loki's nemesis. But there's this other huge story the sources talk about, which seems, well, quite different at first glance. It points to another potential role entirely.
Yes, the Rigsmal. There's an entire poem, a song, in the older Edda dedicated to this. It details Heimdall's supposed role in setting up the social structure, the classes, among humans.
How does that work? How does the guardian of the gods realm get involved in, human social structures?
Well, the Rigsmal tells how Heimdall travels through Midgard, the human world. But he's disguised. He goes by the name Rick, a wanderer.
Okay, Rick the Wanderer. And
in this disguise, he visits 3 different homes. And at each one, he sort of fathers the ancestor of a different social class, as described in the poem.
Right. So first he visits a really basic place.
A shabby little house, yeah. Stays 3 nights, gives some advice, maybe helps them out symbolically. 9 months later, a son is born, Trail. He grows up strong, does hard manual work. He represents the lowest caste, the thralls or servants.
Then he moves up the ladder a bit.
To a better house, same thing. Stays, advises. Son named Carl is born. Carl learns farming, crafts, how to manage things. He founds the class of free farmers, the Carls.
And
He visits a large hall, stays there. A son named Jarl is born. Jarl learns combat swords, spear, bow, but also leadership, how to rule. He's the ancestor of the Jarls, the princes, the nobility. The poem even mentions Rick teaching runes to Jarl's sons, one becoming a wise man.
Wow. So the takeaway from this story is that Heimdall had established the social order when the people as the Germanic tribes knew it. The sources do add a note that it's a simplified picture. Tribes varied, but the myth itself is pretty direct.
It's a really powerful idea. It suggests Heimdall isn't just the divine watchman, but maybe also a guardian of social order, perhaps even seen as the father of the human race, or kind of god of origin and creation.
And thinking about him as this architect of order, that puts his fight with Loki in a different light too, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The source brings this up. If Heimdall represents structure, order, boundaries, and Loki is famously the particularly devious god who loves chaos, disruption, crossing lines,
then maybe their rivalry isn't just personal. Maybe it's this fundamental conflict, order versus chaos personified. That would explain why it's so intense, so final.
Exactly. It adds this whole other layer, making their enmity feel almost cosmic, built into the structure of things, thanks to how the Rigsmal portrays Heimdall.
Okay, so beyond these huge stories, the Guardian role, the origins, Loki, the Rigsmal, the sources touch briefly on a few other things, right? Other interpretations or actual evidence of worship.
Yeah, just briefly. There was apparently an attempt, maybe in the past, to see him as a god of dawn, possibly connecting the gold teeth to light, or maybe his name meaning the one who illuminates the world. But the sources say that idea has now been largely rejected.
In real-world signs of people worshiping him.
According to this material, pretty scarce, found only really in Scandinavia, not much elsewhere. There is one interesting clue, though, an epithet, Halenskidi, which means ram.
Ah, so the ram might have been linked to him?
It suggests the ram was his sacred animal, yeah. And maybe sacrificing a ram was how people sought his protection. Kind of makes sense for a guardian figure.
But beyond that possible ram connection, the sources seem to say there's not much else. No known cults just for him, no specific traditions, not many place names, no big archaeological finds.
Right. A surprising lack of that kind of evidence for such a seemingly important god, which really brings us back to that core point the sources make.
The paradox. The only thing we can say for sure based on this is that Heimdall is definitely the guardian god.
Yep, that part's clear. But anything else? How else the Germanic peoples might have seen him, worshipped him, what his full significance was beyond guarding the bridge? The sources conclude it will probably remain a mystery.
It really feels like that's the lasting impression. For all the vivid details and unique stories, the mighty guardian god Heimdall, he just remains fundamentally mysterious.
He really does. He's right there at the critical juncture, holding that horn that connects everything, but so much about him is still, in the shadows.
So looking back on this deep dive, we've seen Heimdall as the ultimate watchman, the guardian of Asgard with those unbelievable senses and the Gjallarhorn. We've touched on his strange birth from the sea waves, We saw his intense, fatal rivalry with Loki play out. And then we discovered this whole other dimension in the Rigsmal, where he seems to establish human social order, which even reframes the Loki conflict.
It's a fascinating combination, isn't it? A very clear, defined job this century alongside this profound uncertainty about his deeper meaning, how people truly connected with him beyond that role.
It does leave you wondering, based on these sources, how does one god seem to embody both that absolute defense of the divine world and the structuring of the human one? Are those roles complementary, or do they point to a more complex, maybe even contradictory figure?
Or maybe you think about that clash between the ultimate guardian of order, Heimdall, and the ultimate disruptor, Loki. What does that constant tension, woven right through the myths, tell us about the core concerns or worldview embedded in these stories?
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the enduring mysteries surrounding Heimdall.